Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The chandelier sparkled above the long mahogany dining table, but Zina barely noticed it. Her plate of jollof rice sat untouched. Around her, the Okoye family laughed, clinked glasses, and passed serving dishes like a well-rehearsed orchestra. But Zina's chest tightened with each word spoken. Chief Emeka Okoye, the patriarch, leaned forward with a prideful smile. "So, my dear Zina, you haven't told us your answer yet," he said. "Chief Anazi's son is a rare find. Educated abroad. Their estate in Ikoyi alone." "I said no," Zina cut in quietly. The room stilled. She didn't raise her voice, but her words dropped like lead. Ngozi, her stepmother, raised an eyebrow. Dara and Tolu, her half-siblings, exchanged smug glances like they'd expected it. "No." Chief Emeka echoed, his voice low with disbelief. "Are you mad? Do you know what that family could do for us?" Zina met his gaze. "I don't want to marry a man I don't love. I want to finish my engineering diploma." Ngozi let out a dry laugh. "Engineering? Who will marry a girl like you, bookish, plain, always scribbling nonsense in one corner? You're 20 and still dreaming like a child." "I didn't ask for your opinion," Zina murmured, eyes fixed on her untouched food. "Enough." Chief Emeka thundered, slamming his palm on the table. Cutlery jumped. Everyone froze. Then, in one swift movement, he reached across the table, grabbed her ceramic plate and flung it to the tiled floor. Shattered. "You're no longer my daughter," he roared. "You want to be a disgrace? Then disgrace yourself outside my house." Zina's body trembled, but she didn't cry. Not a single tear. She stood up calmly, took her small crossbody bag from the chair, and walked out without another word. "Don't come back here." Ngozi shouted after her. "You'll regret this, you stubborn, ungrateful girl." Behind her, Dara smirked. "Watch her crawl back when the world slaps her." The gate clicked shut behind her. The late-night air was damp. Rain started falling in a soft drizzle. Zina wrapped her arms around herself and started walking down the dim street. No plan. No shelter. No home. But her dignity? Still intact. As the rain soaked her clothes and the chill bit into her skin, she whispered to herself, "They think I'm finished." She clutched the little notebook in her bag tighter, her only possession from her room. Inside were notes, sketches, and dreams she refused to let die. From the shadows, an old woman selling roasted corn under a tarp glanced at her soaked figure. "Child," the woman said gently, "you shouldn't be out here in this storm. Come and sit. At least until the rain stops." Zina hesitated, then stepped under the tarp. Her journey had just begun. The old woman's name was Mrs. Adelik. Her hands were wrinkled but strong, and her smile was lined with years of quiet wisdom. "I've seen that look before," she said as Zina sat on a small bench under the tarp, dripping wet. "That silence that holds too many words." Zina didn't respond. "You don't have to talk. Just sit." The night passed slowly. The roasted corn fire popped as thunder rolled far in the distance. Eventually, Mrs. Adelik packed up her stand and motioned toward a small rust-colored bungalow nearby. "I have a spare cot. You can rest there. Safe and dry." Zina hesitated but nodded. The cot was worn, the room tiny, but it felt safer than anywhere she'd been that night. She curled up without a word, still in her wet clothes. Her body was cold, but her mind was burning. Memories of her father's rage, her stepmother's venom, her siblings' laughter haunted her. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the window. The scent of akara drifted through the air. "You can stay a while if you need," Mrs. Adelik said kindly. "No one who's broken should be left to break further." Zina blinked hard. No one had shown her that kind of softness in years. "What's your name, child?" "Zina." "And what did the world do to you, Zina?" Zina lowered her gaze. "It made me feel like I was nothing." Mrs. Adelik sat beside her. "Then prove it wrong." Zina began helping around the house, sweeping, cleaning, fetching water. She never asked for more than she needed. But she noticed things, how the corn business was run, what sold fastest when the market peaked. "You see too much for someone so quiet," Mrs. Adelik observed one day. "I listen," Zina replied. One night, as they sat watching the stars from the porch, Zina finally asked, "Why did you help me?" The woman looked at her with tired, kind eyes. "Because someone once helped me when I was broken. And I swore if I ever had the chance I'd pass that mercy on." Zina nodded. "Then I'll make it count." She didn't know how yet. But something had awakened in her. Zina began working mornings at a small roadside food stall run by a blunt, no-nonsense woman named Mama Tay. The pay was small, the hours long, but Zina didn't complain. She served, washed plates, took orders. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Her old schoolmates sometimes passed by. One of them, Gloria, laughed loudly. "You? A waitress? You should have married rich like your sister." Zina smiled but said nothing. Later that day she wrote the stall's daily sales down in her notebook. Patterns were forming. On Fridays yam porridge sold more. Customers preferred sachet water chilled, not frozen. One day Mama Tay caught her scribbling. "What are you writing?" "Just some ideas." The next week, Zina quietly reorganized the serving queue. Cut wait time by 4 minutes. Increased lunch orders. Sales jumped. Mama Tay raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Then she noticed her profits were up. "What did you do, girl?" "I just paid attention," Zina replied. Mama Tay handed her an extra 500 Nigerian nairas. "Use that to buy better shoes. These your sandals are suffering." Zina smiled. But not everyone was kind. A customer grabbed her wrist one day and muttered, "Pretty face wasting away in sweat. You sure you don't want to make extra?" Zina yanked her hand away and glared. "I serve food, not desperation." The man laughed and left. But Zina felt the sting. She went home that day and cried quietly on the cot. Mrs. Adelik sat beside her, holding her hand in silence. "Some people don't know gold when it's still covered in dust," she said. Zina looked up. "Then I'll shine louder than they ever imagined." She got back up and kept working. Mrs. Adelik's son, Kunal, visited one afternoon. A quiet man in his mid-30s with glasses and kind eyes. "She's the girl I told you about," Mrs. Adelik said proudly. Zina. "Smart. Too smart to be serving puff-puff." Kunal smiled. "Mama says you've got an eye for business." Zina shrugged. "I just pay attention." He asked her questions about sales flow, customer turnover. She answered with sharp clarity. By the end, Kunal said, "I work at West Grid Regional Power Division. Ever thought about applying your brain to infrastructure?" Zina blinked. "Me? Yes. We have a community skill program. Evening classes. Entry-level certifications." That night, Zina couldn't sleep. Energy infrastructure? Power? It wasn't something she'd considered, but it stirred something inside her. She applied the next week. Classes began. She studied hard, learning about transformers, billing systems, outage zones, rural electrification. She still worked the food stall by day, studied by night, helped at home in between. But she had a spark now, and it wouldn't fade. The years passed quietly. Zina didn't attend reunions. She didn't post her progress online. She simply worked. By 24, she had climbed into an admin role at a utility office in Kwara. By 26, she was assisting on regional expansion. By 28, she had become a silent name behind procurement and energy contracts in multiple states. She used her mother's maiden name now, Zina Ease. Few people connected her to the Okoyes. But the Okoyes? They were struggling. Chief Emeka had invested in a luxury estate near Abuja, right before the market collapsed. Corruption scandals swirled. Their generator contract failed. Water bills piled. And the power company? One of its top board advisors, unseen, unheard but highly respected, was Zina. One day she saw a name on a disconnect order that made her pause. Chief Emeka Okoye Estate. She didn't interfere. She didn't stop it. But she whispered, "Let the darkness teach them." The power flickered once, then went out entirely. At the Okoye Estate in Abuja, candles were lit hurriedly. Chief Emeka banged the table. "Call the generator guy." Ngozi was already dialing. "He said their contract expired last week. And you refused to renew it." "I was waiting for better terms." "Well, now we're in darkness." Dara snapped, waving her phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Nothing. Tolu glanced at his tablet. "Water's not running either." "Did they cut that too?" "Check the utility bill." Emeka ordered. Ngozi shuffled through drawers, found a folded bill, red stamped and final notice. Service disconnection due to non-payment and fraudulent misreporting. She hissed. "Fraudulent." Dara scrolled through social media. "Why are we even on a prepaid system? We used to have staff managing this." "Because we're cutting costs," Emeka growled. That night, they gathered by candlelight, fans off, sweat trickling. The estate was eerily quiet. Meanwhile, at the utility company headquarters, Zina sat in a meeting, calm and composed. She reviewed a list of flagged accounts for non-compliance. Any objections? The lead manager asked. Zina tapped one estate on the list. If we don't treat all clients equally, we weaken the system. The others nodded. That was that. Later, she stood at the office window watching the sun set over the city. Once upon a time she would have cried for her family, begged for love. Now she had outgrown the need for their approval. They didn't know her name anymore, but her signature lived on every file that touched their home. And the gate that once shut her out? It bore no memory of her name. The spreadsheet glowed on Zina's screen, rows of customer data, flagged estates, outstanding bills. Her eye paused on one entry. Client, Chief Emeka Okoye. Status, disconnected. Pending reconnection. Recommendation, board review. She leaned back in her chair, face expressionless. The intern nearby, noticing her pause, asked, "Should we escalate the Okoye case?" Zina shook her head. "Follow protocol. Nothing special." Her voice was calm. But inside, old memories stirred, the broken plate, Ngozi's voice calling her useless, Dara's laughter. She clicked through. Notes showed the estate had ignored 3 notices. Attempted to bribe a technician. Refused to pay reconnection fees. Zina made a final note. Do not process override requests unless board approved. Treat as standard. No revenge. Just policy. Later, in the staff lounge, Colonel Adelik passed her a file. Funny how names come full circle, he said, sipping his tea. Zina raised an eyebrow. You knew. Eventually. Your posture. Your silence. Your fire. She smiled faintly. They never saw it. He leaned in. They still don't. Back at the estate, Emeka shouted into his phone again. My daughter used to work in this sector. I raised her. I built her. But no one answered. Because power doesn't respond to noise. It responds to responsibility. 2 days. No lights. No water. No response. Chief Emeka paced like a caged lion. Ngozi fanned herself furiously, muttering insults about lazy technicians. Dara screamed into her phone when her influencer live failed to connect. Tolu sat by the pool, blank-faced, staring into the dry tiles. This is sabotage, Emeka declared. No, Dara snapped. It's karma. What did you say? You threw her out, she hissed. We all did. And now we're begging for what she might control. Emeka fell silent. Ngozi spoke bitterly. Even if she works there, what's stopping her from helping? She's still your child. She was, Emeka muttered. Later that night, a knock came at the gate. They rushed out, only to find a utility contractor dropping off a printed notice. Read. Service disruption may continue due to ongoing maintenance. Please resolve account issues at the nearest office. Ngozi chased after him. Wait. Who sent you? Can't we speak to someone? The contractor shrugged. I only deliver. Tolu stood in the driveway, shirtless, drenched in sweat. This house used to be a palace, he whispered. Now we're trapped in a hot, silent tomb. Inside, their silence was louder than any scream. Zina adjusted her hard hat as she rode in the back of a white utility van with the Westgrid logo. They were en route to a rural community where she was spearheading a solar pilot project. The site buzzed with life. Children running, technicians installing panels, locals clapping as lights flickered on. It was what Zina loved most, quiet transformation. On the drive back they stopped at a fuel station. As she stepped out to stretch, her eyes landed on a familiar figure sitting near the edge of the compound. Tolu. Her half-brother was thinner, paler. He sat under a faded umbrella, begging for transport fare with an empty bottle of water beside him. Zina froze. He looked up at her briefly, then past her. Didn't recognize her. She walked into the mini-mart, bought 2 bottles of water and walked back toward him. Here, she said quietly, placing 1 bottle in front of him. He mumbled a thank you without looking. She turned and got back in the van. No need to reveal herself. No point in scolding or pity. She had learned, dignity doesn't need to announce itself. It arrives. It gives. It leaves. Mrs. Adelik was cooking ogbono when the knock came. She opened the door slowly, wiping her hands with a towel. Chief Emeka and Ngozi stood there. 2 shadows from Zina's past. Good afternoon, Ma, Emeka said politely, his voice unfamiliar in humility. We heard Zina once lived here. Mrs. Adelik didn't flinch. She did. We need to speak with her. She doesn't live here anymore. Ngozi stepped forward, her voice softer than usual. Please. We just want to talk. Tell her we came. Mrs. Adelique's smile was polite. Cool. If she wanted you to find her, you would have. Emika's face fell. Madam, I know we hurt her. We didn't see her. But we're desperate. She needed you long before you were desperate, she said flatly. And you weren't there. There was a long silence. Mrs. Adelique nodded once. Good day. She closed the door. Behind it, she exhaled slowly, eyes misty, not from sorrow but pride. The Okoye estate sat in darkness. Dara lit the last candle and set it in a saucer. We can't live like this. It's been 4 days. Chief Emeka sat on the edge of a leather chair, face in his hands. His once polished shoes were dusty. Ngozi paced restlessly, wringing her fingers. We have to do something, Tolu said. No one will take our calls anymore. They'll listen, Emeka barked. They won't, Dara cut in. Our name is garbage now. Nobody wants to associate with a failing family with unpaid bills and a fraud case pending. Ngozi turned to her husband. What about Zina? Emeka's face darkened. She's your daughter, Ngozi pressed. Whatever happened, she may be the only one who can save us. She doesn't want to see us, Tolu added. I wouldn't either. Dara folded her arms. She's not the same girl we mocked. That girl wouldn't leave us in darkness. But the woman she's become? She might. There was silence. Finally, Emeka sighed. Call everyone. Board members. Contractors. We'll meet here tomorrow. We can't show weakness. Dara rolled her eyes. We already have. That night, they sat together in silence, candles melting slowly. For the first time in years, the Okoyes weren't speaking over each other. They were just listening. To silence. And to consequence. Zina sat at her desk, sorting files for an upcoming infrastructure conference. Amid the paperwork, a small envelope slipped out of a folder. She recognized it immediately. A letter written 5 years ago and never sent. She opened it slowly. Dear Daddy, I know you're angry. I know I disappointed you. But I needed to live for myself, not for a name. I wanted you to love me even when I said no. I hoped you'd ask why, not just slam the door. I miss home. I miss being seen. But maybe I was never really seen there. Zina smiled faintly. Her handwriting was softer then. Her words more hopeful. She folded the letter and returned it to its envelope. The woman she was when she wrote it no longer existed. She no longer needed their validation. She had built something better. Something stronger. Her phone buzzed. A reminder, conference briefing, 3 p.m. She stood, fixed her jacket and walked out. Her heels clicked across marble tiles as she headed to the boardroom. Outside the sun blazed. Inside her? Calm. Control. Power. And not a trace of the girl who once begged for love. The Ministry of Energy had launched a reform program to restructure luxury estates draining national grids. Zina was selected as lead consultant. This estate here, one official pointed, uses thrice the standard power allocation. Zina glanced at the name, Okoye Estate. A beat passed. She circled it on the map. Include it in the pilot test group. Do you know them? Her assistant asked. Zina's pen paused. No. The reforms would audit all faulty metering, overuse and unpaid surcharges. The estates could stay, if they met the new standards. Zina wasn't targeting her family. She wasn't avenging a broken past. She was protecting the future. She attended stakeholder meetings, ran data simulations, reviewed case files. Every detail about the Okoye estate was processed like any other. Because to her, they were no longer personal. They were policy. Later that week, she stood before a group of estate managers and said, "This reform is not to punish, it's to protect the integrity of our nation's power system. Those who qualify will stay. Those who fail will be disconnected." She never blinked. She never stammered. She simply did the job. And the world took notice. Chief Emeka arrived at the National Utilities Summit as a desperate man. His suit was crisp, but his hands trembled. He scanned the name tags of every high-ranking guest, searching for someone, anyone, who might help. He spotted a familiar surname on the event schedule. Keynote address, Ms. Zina Okoye, the lead consultant, West Grid Energy Solutions. He froze. Ngozi, seated beside him, let out a gasp. Zina? The room fell silent as the MC stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a woman reshaping power access in our region, Ms. Zina Okoye. Zina walked to the stage in a fitted navy suit. Her braids were pinned neatly. Her eyes calm. Emeka stared, stunned. She stood at the podium. Years ago I was told I had no value. That my ideas were childish. But today I stand before you because power, true power, is not about control. It's about consistency, clarity, and courage. The crowd applauded. Emeka didn't. He couldn't. He simply stared at the daughter he once erased, now illuminating the very world he could no longer navigate. After the keynote, Zina descended the stage and was immediately greeted by handshakes, congratulations, and media flashes. Then she saw him. Chief Emeka stood alone by the exit, holding his cap in both hands like a child waiting to be scolded. "Zina," he called softly. She turned, met his eyes without flinching. "You've grown," he said. "Stronger. Wiser." "Thank you," she said simply. He hesitated. "Can we talk? Just us?" She nodded slightly, leading him into a quieter hallway. "I was wrong," he said. "Blinded by ego. I should have supported you. I see that now." Zina folded her arms. "Do you? I want you to come back," he pleaded. "To help restore our name." She stared at him. "I'm building something else now." Emeka swallowed hard. "But we're your family." She smiled faintly. "That depends on how you define family." Before he could speak again, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. "I have a project to present." "Zina." She turned and walked away. Her silence said more than any scream ever could. At the Okoye estate, water gushed again from the taps. Ngozi shrieked in joy. Finally. Thank God, someone must have listened. Tolu rushed to the kitchen sink. Dara jumped into the shower. But the joy was short-lived. Moments later, a courier dropped a thick brown envelope at their gate. It was a bill. Chief Emeka opened it, and nearly dropped it. Nigerian Naira 3,820,000.00. Final reconnection fee plus penalties. Scrawled at the bottom in faint blue ink. Authorized, Z. Okoye. Ngozi snatched the paper. 3.8 million? For water and light. Ineligible for community subsidy, Tolu read aloud, confused. What does that mean? Dara asked. Emeka swallowed hard. It means we've been removed from the discounted tier. Ngozi crumpled the paper. She's making us crawl? Your daughter wants to humiliate us. Emeka sat down slowly. No, she wants us to understand. Silence filled the room. No one cheered anymore. The taps flowed, the bulbs flickered on, but the house remained cold. It wasn't just the lights that had changed, it was the power dynamic. Zina had given them back electricity. But she also reminded them who now held the switch. Sunday morning headlines blazed with the success of the West Grid reform. One paper showed Zina, smiling faintly in a hard hat, walking with school children under newly installed solar streetlights. She's young, brilliant, and silent, but her power touches thousands. Dara stared at the image, stunned. She looks happy. Tolu whispered, she's doing something real. And we treated her like a failure. Ngozi grabbed the paper. This is propaganda. But even Emeka didn't defend her. He sat at the dining table, eyes glassy. She was right, he muttered. All along. She saw where the world was going and we saw only money. Dara wiped her face. Do you think she hates us? I think, Emeka said softly, she just doesn't need us. Across town, Zina placed her own copy of the newspaper into a drawer. She didn't cry. She didn't gloat. She just kept working. She knew now that being seen wasn't nearly as important as building something worth seeing. Mrs. Adelik's home glowed with music and laughter. Friends, engineers, community leaders, and students gathered to celebrate Zina's project launch. Long tables held steaming platters of jollof, puff-puff, and fried plantains. Kids played in the courtyard. Glasses clinked. You've built something bigger than anything they could have imagined, Kunal toasted. Mrs. Adelik hugged Zina tightly. I told you, you were born to lead. As the night deepened, an envelope arrived, hand-delivered. Simple. White. The handwriting read, The Okoye Family. Zina turned it in her hands. Dara had written it. Inside was a card. We see you now. We are sorry. If you ever wish to speak, our doors are open. Dara, Tolu, Ngozi, and Dad. Zina placed it beside her wine glass. She didn't open it again. Her real family was here, those who loved her without conditions. That night, as the stars blinked above, Zina danced. Not for anyone's approval. Just for joy. Weeks later, Zina walked through the Okoye estate gates for the first time in years, not as a daughter but as a consultant. She wore a crisp white blouse and navy slacks. A utility inspector followed with a clipboard. Estate requires rewiring and solar transitions, he explained. Some sections are outdated. Zina nodded. Prioritize safety. And do it properly. No shortcuts. They moved through the compound, past the dining room where her plate was once shattered, past the garden she used to water alone. Her footsteps echoed through the empty hallways. Ngozi appeared in the corridor but froze. Zina. Zina looked at her, said nothing and walked past. Emeka watched from upstairs but didn't come down. Dara and Tolu stood in the courtyard. Tolu called softly, "We're sorry, Zina." She paused briefly. Then continued. No hugs. No final words. Just a quiet audit of the place that once cast her out. She left as silently as she had returned, except now she held the keys. Not to the house, but to their reality. Zina stood on the balcony of her new home, a modern bungalow in the hills, solar-powered, serene. Below, the lights of the city sparkled like fireflies. Beside her, Mrs. Adelik sipped tea. "You've changed the lives of thousands, child." Zina smiled. "And I did it without screaming. Because power doesn't scream," the old woman said. "It works." Zina nodded slowly. Her phone buzzed, another request for a new project. She turned it over without answering. Tonight wasn't for ambition. It was for peace. She thought back to the night she stood in the rain, soaked and heartbroken. She had nothing. Now she had herself. And that was everything. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply and whispered to the stars. "I was never the outcast. I was the origin." The city lights flickered. And the world moved forward. On the strength of a woman they never saw coming. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.